am here where, of course, preparations are underway in anticipation of the arrival of this cyclone. We're expecting it to make landfall Thursday night into Friday morning. Premier David Crisafulli, thank you so much for joining us on News Breakfast.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for your time and thanks for your interest. It's important we get a message out to Queenslanders at the moment.
What is your main message?
That all the modelling shows that it has intensified overnight to a Category 2, and all of the models show that it will cross the coast at some stage in the later half of this week. So I want Queenslanders to know we've done our bit for our preparations. We've pre-positioned generators and health staff onto some of those vulnerable island communities, for example. We're making sure that all the logistics are in place. We want Queenslanders to do the same. And this is an unusual event. It's not unprecedented, but it is unusual to have a cyclone of this severity crossing the coast. But I've seen the way that Southeast Queenslanders have handled flooding in the past. This just has an added layer of complexity. So there's three phases that they'll go through. At the moment, it's about those increasing swells, and we've seen waves of over 7 metres overnight off North Straddie. So that is a real impact. It will then be the wind. And then after, it's the potential for that flooding rain. And I just want people to be prepared for all of those scenarios.
We've seen overnight the QET, they're announcing they're closing campuses and facilities from midnight tonight. Ferry services have halted in anticipation. Are you anticipating schools will close? What about hospitals? What are you looking at there?
In terms of schools, we'll update people every afternoon about the following day. I want people to be able to take the time to plan the logistics so they're not having a mad scramble in the morning. We'll continue to operate health services for as long as it's safe to do so, but again, we'll be getting out that messaging. So people can go either at the moment to the Get Ready Queensland website and in time the disaster.qld website. As we get information, we'll share it with Queenslanders. We're just asking people to do the same. So talk to your work colleagues, sing over the fence to the neighbour. We just have to have a level of understanding that there's an added layer of complexity with a cyclone, but it is manageable and we can get people through this, but people have to do the preparation now and then listen to warnings, and then we'll all get through it.
We've heard that some residents may have to make the decision fairly early to leave. Are you anticipating that many residents will have to do so? Are you looking at evacuation centres, relief centres?
We'll run models based on what a crossing at a high tide would look like. If a cyclone passes at a high tide, there's obviously a larger risk with storm surge, so we'll run models and communicate that. Many of those people on the islands, that decision either has been taken away from them or that window will close shortly. Once you make a decision to go or to stay, we'll support you through that, and we have pre-positioned to do that. We've done everything from speaking to the telecommunications companies to try to get generators to their towers to make sure that can continue for as long as possible. But there is the real risk of losing power. So do the little things. Get your items in one place. Clear your yard of loose items. Clear the debris. Make sure that you've got bottled water. Is there fuel in the car? All of those things matter, but do it in a way that knows that we will get through it if you do heed those warnings.
Certainly looks like a lot of people are heeding those warnings. We've seen tens of thousands of sandbags already, but a lot of supermarket shelves are being stripped. Are you worried that people are going the other way and that they'll start to panic a bit?
Well, my message to the supermarkets is to do all you can to restock. The issue we had in North Queensland, we had the Bruce Highway cut, so there was no way of getting it in there other than via air. In this case, that's not the case. There's access north and south and west, so we're asking them to do all they can to stock shelves. People are responding, and that's a good thing. I just want people to be ready for this. And I've heard a couple of comments from people say, oh, well, that won't happen here. Well, history shows it has. We've had 50 years ago, we had a Category 2 cross the Gold Coast. And in 70 years ago, a system that predates that category system but was in fact larger than that. It can happen. But if you do the preparation as an individual, and if we continue to do what we're doing, we'll get through this.
Just how worried are you about this when it makes landfall?
Oh, look, it's a challenge, but I want people to know that we are putting the things in place to deal with it. And disaster events are never perfect. But if you do the little things beforehand, it makes a world of difference at the back end. So as I said, we're monitoring those three phases. We're going to share that information, and people will make an informed decision if you give them the intel. And I'm a big believer in that, and that's why I'm grateful for your time this morning.
Will you be looking to the federal government for any help at all?
The assistance has been excellent from both sides of politics in Canberra. It's been excellent. We've had the federal minister joining our disaster management meetings. and the input from local government has been fantastic as well. What people want in a disaster time is to know that everyone's on a unity ticket, and it's important because we need to mobilise those resources early. We might need, for example, resources across all levels of government to door knock people if it gets to that stage where people need to evacuate. We might need all levels of government if an event happens to pick up the pieces. So the time to embed those relationships is not afterwards. The time to embed those relationships are before, and we've done a lot of work with that. It's not our first rodeo in Queensland, unfortunately, but what that does do is build a level of resilience amongst people, and provided that people use that resilience and don't make it about complacency, but provided they are resilient and know that we'll get through it, my messaging is just to say to people, just stay connected. We've spoken to the telecommunications companies about putting off some of their planned maintenance, and I mentioned before about getting the electricity to those towers. We're asking them to try to increase their bandwidth because we will need send to text messages, but it's all sorts of things. Get on the website, talk to your neighbour. There's a lot to do.
Premier David Crisafulli, I know you have another meeting with emergency services. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on News Breakfast. We really appreciate it.
Grateful for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.